would you please tell us who you are and how long you have been in the society?
Absolutely. So, my name's Fish, or Fischer, if you want to be fancy, and I hail from Ben Dunfirth. I was introduced to the SCA by Manic, who brought me to Huntsman's Harvest in 2018. And I kind of like floated in and out of the society for a little while. So I'd say I've probably been in for about a year and a half in total.
Okay. Okay. So fairly new to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Awesome. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your photography background?
I took an interest in photography, I'd say sometime like early high school. I've always been an art student.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to shoot like a little bit of everything. For photography, I kind of gravitated more towards portrait photography, Kelsa. I always enjoyed doing more like kind of experimental photo shoots based off of like a concept or a feeling, and mostly just also playing with them in Photoshop. I've always been more of a Photoshop person than anything else. And I liked photoshopping the photos afterwards to see how I could really kind of like exaggerate that feeling. I've always been just kind of a hobby photographer. There was a little period where I did some product photography, and I did a wedding once. Never again. It was the most stressful thing ever. And yeah, so I've kind of just tried to keep it mostly to myself, because if you just do it as a hobby, you just do it for yourself, then there's no really like stress of expectations or deadlines or anything. It's just an art for you, and you get to shoot whatever you want to shoot when you want to shoot it, and I love it that way.
Awesome. So, you mentioned that you like to Photoshop your photos that you take. Would you be able to give us a brief rundown of what your process is in doing that? I know that's fairly of a broad question, but
Oh, problem. Yeah, so generally I shoot way too many photos. Uh, I'll I'll shoot a ton of photos. I generally try to, because I think my method of shooting is maybe a little less conventional. I'm not as good at keeping at paying attention to the usual like lighting and everything. So I might have some things that are a little bit too dark. So I do generally like try to shoot in continuous. I also use primarily a telephoto lens. So after a while, your hand starts getting really shaky. So I'll have a couple photos, take one or two of like a set of photos that have like everybody looks good, nobody's making a funny face or anything, the lighting looks good, it's not too blurry. I'll put that in Photoshop, and then I usually keep a list of presets per each event. Actually, some people I have presets named after certain people. Very flattering. So yeah, I'll just apply a preset and then kind of adjust it from there.
okay.
And yeah, you just yeah, it's a lot of just like batch processing stuff. So
Okay.
I'll yeah, just
So
make something to make it go a little bit faster and adjust manually per each photo from there.
Okay, so more to get each photo kind of to a similar level of production rather than changing things around or too much like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
For SEA photos, at least for event photos. If I'm doing something experimental, then it totally depends on the photo. I haven't actually done one of those, like that kind of shoot in a while, but I used to sort of do a little bit of like photo compilation work. So yeah, just really like play with the color toning and everything. If it's make it a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer, depending on the kind of feeling that you want to elicit out of it, or a lot of like small retouching things. I don't do that so much with the SEA photos, just because there's so many of them to do.
That's fair.
But yeah.
Awesome. What would you say specifically would draw you or kind of motivates you to become one of the main, for lack of a better way of putting it, one of the main kingdom photographers at events?
So it's a bit of a a bit of a long road. I used to do a lot of event photography at conventions because I used to be a part of like the cosplay community.
Nice.
So I did a little bit of photography, and then I did a little bit of the costuming as well. And when you're doing the costuming, when you have photos taken of you, you have like a certain number of poses that you'll rotate through. And people, when they're taking the photos, they'll usually get relatively the same sort of pose because you're doing the same thing over and over again. And everyone tends to step back, get a full frame shot of the whole costume because you want to showcase the whole costume. And I think what influenced me to kind of change the way that I took those photos was I had two different photographers take a photo of me where one was just, it was me in a pose, but they took it from a very different angle, and it wasn't focusing on the costume so much as it was focusing on on the face and the emotion of the pose and of the character. And then the other one, which is very similar to the way that I do my photos now, was taken by somebody who I didn't even see. They were like way down the street, and they got a picture of me with a telephoto lens, not paying attention at all, and not really in my like generic in-character pose mode. And I found that I really, really loved those shots. It was something very different than I don't want to say like cookie cutter, but you end up having basically a lot of the exact same shot taken by different people. And it's neat, but it's only so interesting. So I tried to kind of change my way of shooting a little bit to kind of actually take a little bit of my original style of these more experimental photo shoots and combine the two and really focus on getting people's emotion and taking pictures of the poses and everything, but also when people aren't posing and when they're relaxing, and really catch people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that I really loved shooting that way because it was so different, and you could really feel that moment. So you can catch those moments of somebody in character, but then you also catch them dropping their guard and maybe just talking to their friend and taking a breather. And I found that other people really loved seeing those photos too because they were so different, and it really showed them as a person as opposed to them as a character.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved about it in the SEA was the same sort of thing. Like it puts people back into that moment when someone's talking with their friends and laughing and telling or hearing a really good story or receiving an award or getting a really awesome shot when they're fighting. It's very natural and it's very unguarded because nobody's looking at the camera and smiling for the camera. They're just there. They're just enjoying the moment, and they're in garb and with friends. And that's what I really love to capture. There's so many amazing and passionate people in the SEA who put so much heart into creating this world. And that I love to capture that, getting like the costume and just the overall aesthetic and people just living in it, I think is so fantastic.
Oh, I can definitely sense the passion there, and I can definitely appreciate that. I know, for example, the picture you got of me at Tournoi when I was up in the front, that's honestly one of my favorite photos from any of the SCA events I've ever attended. So,
oh, thank you. Oh, no problem. I love taking those photos because when people get awards, it's just when you hear your name called, it's such a shock, right?
That's why I tend to sit at the back out of the way.
Yeah, you don't know if you're getting called up because you're in trouble or yeah, and just seeing people get those awards is it's so heartwarming.
And I can definitely appreciate what you're saying about the difference between the almost not necessarily the staged, but the posing versus the in the moment. I know when I used to costume with the 501st, there's only so many ways I can stand in an Imperial uniform.
Yeah.
It does start to get a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
And then some of my favorite photos from then were when I was just, I think it was the beaches, the Easter parade in Toronto, where a friend and me were walking on the beach because he was in a sand trooper, I was in my crewman, and someone just kind of snapped the picture, and it kind of looked like we were on Tatooine. So
that's awesome.
The differences between those kind of photos, I can definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Because the natural makes it feel more real. It kind of
Mhm.
takes you out of the fact that, people are in garb, they're in costume, we're in a gym, there's a basketball net up here, don't look at that too hard. It's just, this is how people would be living, right? So it just feels way more natural and way more like in the moment.
Yeah, definitely in the immersion. And I
Hmm.
mean, as we are a society for recreating history, that in and of itself, I think, it captures the essence of what we're trying to do. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um, all right. So you've mentioned your camera that you have a telescopic lens on it. What other
Hmm.
equipment do you bring with you when you approach photography at an SCA event versus how you might approach it at other things?
Uh, so for events, I generally take way, way more photos than I would for anything else. I don't generally bring a tripod. I probably should bring a tripod, but I've tried cheating with the tripod a couple times. When I'm taking photos, I tend to be all over the place. I'm shooting up, I'm down, I'm all over. I'm like right up, huddled against one of the poles, taking a picture of the fighters. So trying to shoot with a tripod is, I find, a little bit restricting. So I tend to leave that at home.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'll have my camera. I'll bring the telephoto lens, which is like that's my workhorse because I can get some close-up shots, but usually for fighting, it's not the safest thing to be near. So you can get those shots of people from far away in a safe distance, and also those shots of people who don't know that you're taking photos, which is my favorite thing. I do also have a fixed lens that's really good for portrait photos. I have done a couple shots with that one. The fighters during Crown Tourney, that there was a lot of like full body shots that one's good for, and a couple during the first Huntsman's, I believe. I took some shots with that one. And I don't use that one too much because it does require you to get relatively close to people. So even though it's really good for portraiture, you have to be like right up beside someone and like, yeah, pretend like you're not taking their photo when you're right beside them.
Little hard.
Yeah. So yeah, I have those two. I have just the plain kit lens, which I don't really ever use at events. And then I also have a wide angle lens, which I use primarily for architecture and for taking shots of like crowds and everything. I haven't really gotten to use it yet. Um, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an experimental one, so I haven't used it too much. So that's probably my photography gear. Oh, SD cards, at
Mm.
least two of them and more if I can help it. Uh, Extra battery, because usually my camera ends up dying halfway through. And water, for sure. Water and a protein bar, because when you're really in it, you tend to forget to eat and drink.
Yeah, hydration is important.
Very important. On and off the field.
Hmm.
And a wrist brace. So when you're holding the telephoto all day long, the lens starts to really bear down on your wrist, and I've caused a bit of damage after that. So wearing the kind of wrist brace that has like the metal part here, it helps you like support it, and then
Mm.
you're not going to have a lot of wrist pain the next day after.
Oh, that's
And yeah,
actually kind of interesting because that's not something I think a lot of people would really consider.
yeah, it is definitely worth considering if you do have wrist pain. Like I have carpal tunnel. So for me it's a necessity. I mostly wear them at night. It's hard to wear them during the day, but when you're taking photos, like your hands like that all the time. So it's kind of just constantly bearing down like that.
And
So if
that little
people
bit of
enjoy taking photos, I would definitely recommend giving that a try because it doesn't actually restrict your movement controlling the lens at all.
and that little bit of extra support could make all the difference.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Do you have any tips or just encouragement you'd like to give anyone who is thinking or just are thinking about getting into taking photographs at event, or are just getting into taking photographs at events?
Yeah, for sure. I think honestly my biggest point my biggest tip would probably be to just take pictures of the things that you want to take pictures of. When I started taking photos, I didn't know anybody. Uh, it was really I knew Manic, and that was pretty much it. So the only thing I was really comfortable taking pictures of were the fighters because they didn't know me. I wasn't getting all up in their space or anything, and we could just kind of have that anonymous relationship.
Hmm.
So if you're only comfortable taking pictures of the photos, or if you're most comfortable taking pictures of still life, then you can take pictures of the like art and science events. But if you try to overextend yourself, then you're not going to want to take photos anymore. If you feel like, oh, I should, if I should take a picture of court because it's happening and court's important, then you're not going to want to do it. And that's going to come across in the photos. And that's also going to kind of influence the way that you feel the next time that you take the photos. I didn't take any court photos for the first couple events that I was shooting at, just because I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't know people enough to feel comfortable like going in behind the seats or anything. So I kind of stayed away from that. Yeah, and then once you get more comfortable, you'll find that you enjoy taking photos of more things, and you'll find the thing that you like taking pictures of, and that'll probably expand. I liked taking pictures of the fighters, and then I found more and more that I enjoy taking pictures of just people in garb, talking with their friends, and just really getting that emotion. Oh, actually, one more small tip is to try to be aware of stuff that's in the background. It can be really hard. I find this is especially a problem for like indoor shots. You tend to have there's usually something busy in the background. So if you can kind of shift your angle so that you don't have the basketball net hanging out there, then that's perfect. But you can only do so much. Outdoor shots is not as much of an issue.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, because you don't necessarily consider what's behind unless you're actually thinking about it. Yeah.
I've had a couple shots that would be really good, but everybody in Eldemere wears a lot of red. It's very very bright. And it tends to kind of overtake. If somebody in the forefront's wearing red and then you have a bunch of people in the background that are also wearing red, then you lose that focal point. Oh, and play with angles. I think one of my favorite things to do is taking pictures of the fighters from a lower angle, because when you're looking up at them in the shot, it makes them look bigger. It makes them look a lot more like demanding of attention, a lot like larger than life. And yeah, that's all I have now.
Do you have a closing comment you'd like to share with us?
If you're thinking of taking photos, you don't need a DSLR or anything. If you have one, that's awesome. Phones are getting really good at taking photos, so if you're interested in it, just give it a try on your phone. See what you can get there, and if you want to continue doing it, if you enjoy getting those moments and you find something that you really love, then just keep going. Like don't get frustrated. Your photos will suck. You will have some very bad ones. Everyone does. It's a learning experience, right? And
Part of getting better at something is recognizing the mistakes that you make and learning from them. So
yep, exactly.
Definitely good advice and great encouragement. Thank you.